College football, it seems like it's consistently changing. But will the current climate of college football will that shift the product on the field? Here to discuss and answer that question is Jeff Hunt from the Jeff Needs Sports Podcast and the Jeff Needs Help Podcast. I'm glad Jeff is back. And we're going to have a fun time talking about a topic that I'm pretty sure you at some point will think about because we all love college football. But the product on the field changes. That might change our mind about the sport. We're going to enjoy this fun topic and discuss it right here on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Wednesday, May 25th in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. Jeff Hunt is back with us. It's also my dad's birthday. So before we go any further, happy birthday, Dad. I'm thankful you helped me and you helped me come into the world. And I'm thankful that you have been one of my biggest supporters in this podcasting journey that I am on. Jeff, college football, we love it. I'm glad you're back to talk about something that is very, very important.
Yeah. I'm always happy to be on the show. First of all, happy birthday, Mr. Stevens. I hope you're enjoying a great one. And yeah, it's cool, man. It's with all the basketball and everything, we've been diving into. It's nice to, you forget it really won't be that long and the season is going to be, upon us. And it's been a wild ride this winter in college football. We got a lot to talk about.
Man. Wild winter. Seems like every day something is changing. I was literally thinking, okay, I'm going to get a little break. No more news coming out and more stuff coming from the NCAA. Got the Pac-12 thing coming. I'm like, can the boy just get a break? Like, I'm trying to get into June and to get my summer going, summer topics for the podcast, position breakdowns. But we can't get to any of that because the sport is consistently changing. Our world is consistently changing. And with that thought in mind, I love college football. You love college football. We love the product on the field. And Jeff, the one thing that I don't want to happen is that there are so many changes that come out that what we watch on Saturdays is changed and the product on the field is different. That'll be something that will hit me a little bit different because I love looking up on Saturday, ESPN College Game Day, Fox's pregame show, CBS Sports Network has one. Whatever you want to do to get ready for a college football Saturday, you have your own Saturday morning routine and you watch the game. I don't want that to change. And I don't want my routine to change. And Jeff, I don't want the product on the field to change either.
Yeah, I'm with you. It is scary when there's something, especially, guys like me and you that we love so much and is so important. And it feels like we're really in the wheelhouse now of we've got big games, every weekend. We can watch games all over the country now, which is something that I couldn't do when I was younger. And we've so many great players. The offenses and the defenses are awesome. They're advanced. It's fun. It's not only just important, it's fun to watch. The rivalries are as hot as ever, and it is scary because you see there's all these changes that are going on here, and you're like, how does it not change what's over here that I love? But we all know that that's almost impossible. I went through it with college basketball. I mean, the version of college basketball that we have now compared to what I grew up with is light years different. As soon as, basically the one and done and players coming out of high school, and then, just everything that's happened, whether it's negative, positive, or whatever, it's a different sport now than, I grew up watching. And that's the fear of college football fans. And I get a lot of that, just like you do. A lot of, I always say this on, my show. Basically, people are just saying, I don't want this thing I love to change. And so the easiest way to not do that is to keep things the same. And we're, the box is open. We're not putting the toothpaste back in that tube. Things are changing. Things are changing quickly. You've been on, on the front lines of being critical about the, NCAA and the governing bodies being way behind the curve on this, and it's catching up with them. And I know you've talked about it a lot, and we're seeing the repercussions of that right now, both positive and negative.
We currently are. And Jeff, you mentioned something about college basketball that I think is very important to talk about how there's a connection between the changes in college basketball to the changes in college football. If you were in the early 90s, well, even 80s and into the 90s and into the late 90s, early 2000s, college basketball was drastically changing from that point, from Phi Slamma Jamma to the UNLV Running Rebels, where they were just literally running on everybody. Duke's teams in the early 90s were just lethal. You had UCLA, I think, won it in 95, Arizona
95.
97. Kentucky had some great teams at that time. UConn, Ray Allen Iverson at Georgetown, North Carolina during this time as well. And then all of a sudden, look at college basketball now. It's different.
Yep.
And I had a listener of the podcast message me on Twitter. This is maybe last year this time, during last college basketball season. And they were talking about how college basketball players today are not as good as they used to be. And I think part of that is, this is no fault of anybody's, the one and done era changed drastically the production and the product on the basketball court, and players weren't developing in college like they used to because they were taking advantage of the freedom they have now to go be one and done. Back then, no, even they could go into the NBA right away.
Yep.
It's a different climate. The climate in America was different. The climate in the sports was different. But as people progress, as people change and the mindset shifted, the money got bigger. The pot of money these players can put their hand into got different. Oh, of course, one and done. Go to Kentucky. Go now. Ohio State has a one and done player. Go to these schools, be one and done. Go to the NBA, be a lottery pick, and become a professional athlete immediately. It wasn't just that you had to be one and done. The mindset shifted of the people. We look at college football. We talk about NIL. Talk about the transfer portal. We're seeing conferences now ditch divisions, which I think is a phenomenal move. The NBA might move to that soon as well and just say, hey, top 16 teams, regardless of conference, let's go ahead and get you in the NBA playoffs. We'll see you that way. I think that would be a phenomenal move that I wasn't for the NBA previously, but it makes a whole lot of sense, and it'll make the product in the playoffs a whole lot better. What if, Jeff, this is a hypothetical. We'll get to more of like the product on the field, though. What if the NFL says, you no longer have to be in college or out of high school for 3 years? What if they say it's 2 years, you can come out? So technically, you're going to have guys, some players redshirting 1 year, playing 1 year on the field, and then leaving. That's very, very similar to one and done, if somebody redshirts in football, to one and done in college basketball. A hypothetical, but buddy, with the way things are moving right now, and if you get the right person, a coach, Nick Saban, I don't think he'll go down that road. But if you get the right coach or right player or somebody get in Congress, that might change. And I do believe that's one way the product on the field will change.
You know, it's so funny because I thought for once I might get ahead of the great Jay Stevens, but he beat me to it. I've been thinking, I'm like, I'm going to spring this on him and really think about it. But you're right. That's, of all the things that have happened, that's the one thing we'll call it. If college football goes to, like, I would say a 2 and done is most likely. Here's all I'll say. I'll be honest with you. If it's 2 and done, the top 2 quarterbacks that go in this past NFL draft would have been Stroud and Young.
Yeah.
Like already, like that's how quick, everybody's like, the players are no. Stroud would have went Stroud would have went first round. Young would have went first round. They both would have went ahead of Pickett. And that would have been just this year. And once teams get accustomed to it, especially running backs, a running back comes in and they're going to want to, get them in there and use those carries up and things like that. That is something I think about a lot whenever that day happens. And it's, Maurice Claret, everybody remembers, challenged that. And him and Mike Williams, sadly, fell into it. And they didn't win. And then they had to just sit out a year of college football and all these things. So they did push back a little bit. Times are different now to where there's more money behind the lawyers. There's more money to be made. There's more money to be gained by going in early. And that is the one thing that will completely change the face of college football, like completely, because once you take 2 or 3 of the best quarterbacks out, you've changed college football completely. You've changed the entire season. If I tell you to pick 5 players and take out of college football for next year, it completely changes the face of the college football season coming up. It's not a will survive. It changes Ohio State, changes Alabama, changes probably, maybe USC or whoever, you want to pick. Immediate, huge impacts on giant programs. And that's what we see in college basketball. I mean, Gonzaga is a top 5 college basketball program now because of, the same things that we're talking about. So yeah, hypothetically let's put it this way. College football is not, they are not Teflon. Yeah. And, as sad as it is, you can't stop quote unquote progress, or I'll call it evolution. It hurts us, especially as Buckeyes fans who, we thrive on the way the rules are now. I say that a lot. We thrive on the big school business, and I love it. I like our worst seasons. We're still a really good team, but the fact of the matter is that may be a dinosaur. That may be a thing of the past in 10 years. I can't fathom that world where Alabama and Ohio State are average, but there is the possibility out there.
Think about this. You mentioned Alabama. Last year, if it was a 2-and-done scenario, I will also say I don't think the NFL would do a 1-and-done scenario
No, I don't
for
think so.
college. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think they're smart enough to know the brain is still developing. Even at that age, the body is developing. The maturity alone, these young men are not mature enough to play with these beasts in the NFL. Like, I don't think the NFL is going to do that. It's too physical and demanding of a sport to do that. But you mentioned Alabama. Will Anderson would probably be gone.
Yep.
He would have been the number 1 overall pick. Like, sorry, Trayvon Walker. Number 1 pick would have been Will Anderson from Alabama. But let's bring it back to home. Or, excuse me, one more place. Texas, Bijan Robinson. I keep hearing a lot about him. He may have come out after last season to go to the NFL, and he probably would have been a second-round pick, and he had less rushing yards last year than TreVeyon Henderson, but I still think Bijan Robinson is the best running back.
He would have been the number 1 running back taken.
Yes. But let's bring it back to home. You're probably going to have some offensive linemen leave. DeJuan Jones, who's going to be at Ohio State for his 4th year. If it's 2-and-done after 1 year of starting, he may have gone to the NFL. Stroud, you mentioned Stroud would have been gone. Would Chris Olave have been at Ohio State for 4 years? Probably not. Like, would Garrett Wilson have been there for 3 years? Probably not. Would Jeremy Ruckert? Probably, because his draft stock wasn't going up because his production on the field and the way Ohio State used him wasn't going that way. Would Zach Harrison have stuck around for that long? Like, I don't know. We know the production, but if he can leave after 2 years, 3 years, and go ahead and get that bag, I mean, get paid a little bit, like, well, think about it now. NIL keeps players in college. Great. It's a great opportunity. I like it. But if it goes 2-and-done, we're constantly learning new players. Recruiting, Jeff, gets a whole lot harder. But we're talking about something that's not happening and not even on the fourth, not being discussed right now. I don't think it's even being discussed behind closed doors because I think the NFL is very, very smart and they have a very good product. And they know if they go 2-and-done, that drastically changes their product. And they're not trying to change that at all. But, Jeff, one thing I am interested in, though, NIL's changing, transfer portal's changing, the divisions and conferences are probably going to be ditched by all conferences. You're also probably going to see some more changes, a governing body being formed, who's going to be in charge of it. Will the playoff change? We know we're going to get changes on the playoff. The current climate, though, I think we may see some changes. Commercials, you may see more athletes in commercials. You may see athletes wearing their own personalized memorabilia. I literally said memorabilia during games and pregame. You may get athletes wearing different. You know how NFL players in pregame they will wear certain cleats in pregame, but the NFL will not allow them to wear those same specialized cleats in the game, which I think is very stupid. But that's their rule. We're going to see more of the personalization of the athlete, and for some, that product, that same player might be the same athlete with the shoes on that are specialized or those non-specialized shoes that he wears. That player might be exactly the same. But as players start to personalize themselves and as schools maybe allow athletes to wear more logos of the athlete on the field and do their own thing, and as celebrations might get expanded, we're slowly, I do believe, going to slowly see a different product to some on the field because of the personalization of the athlete. And there are some people, Jeff, that won't like that. And I don't know where you stand with that. One thing Jeff and I don't do, a little behind the scenes, Jeff and I don't share notes at all.
No.
I send him a text, I give him a topic, and then we get on here and we talk about it and discuss it. But I do wonder how the personalization of the athlete, how athletes can personalize themselves on television. I wonder how that's going to be perceived by college football fans, not just like you and I, but even the casual that only pops in for some bowl games, the playoffs, and the big games in college football, like Ohio State versus Michigan.
Well, what it's going to become is much like the NFL. When they're first thing is when the networks advertising games, because they've always snuck it in. I used to complain about this for years before the NIL. Is they would always sneak it in. They would say, let's just say, Ohio State versus Florida, but the faces they showed were always, Troy Smith, Tim Tebow, whoever, but they didn't say it. They would just say a battle of these two schools, but then it was just highlights of whatever the best player is. As to where now, I think it's going to be more like literally C.J. Stroud, versus let's just say Bryce Young. It's going to be more like not talk on the afternoon shows, but like the commercials, much like if it's Brady and Favre or something like that. I think that's a change you'll see. The personalization is going to be weird because you're without a doubt you're going to have, I don't know how big it's going to be, but you're going to have some sort of entourages now, because you're going to have handlers and you're going to have advertisers and you're going to have people that are invested in one athlete. You know what I mean? If you're a car dealer and you've paid a kid, X amount of dollars, you're watching that game really intently, and that's, like, okay, how did he do? How's he doing? As opposed to, just putting your name on the Ohio State logo or something like that. That's weird. Then of course there's going to be the disparity between the players. Let's just say you got an offensive lineman who nobody knows his name, but he's doing a, great job, hardest worker. And then he might take umbrage with the quarterback behind him making $400,000 or $500,000 off of something. Like, that's not, I'm not saying it's always going to be a case, but things like that do happen. That's something. It will be weird, but then I think of like, what would it have been like in the Tim Tebow days if they have the NIL? He would have been one of the biggest stars in sports for at least 2 years of his career at Florida, if he chose to. And I think he would have, whether, not being greedy or anything, but I think he would have went the route of that, because he was one of the biggest stars, one of the most famous people in sports anyway. Now all of a sudden somebody can put their name on his chest and their logo, and he can be on commercials. Like, my goodness, he would have been one of the biggest commercial stars, of 2008, 2009. I think of guys like that, I don't, and there's always going to be somebody, Will Anderson in Alabama is probably going to be, a rock star. I bet he's on every local commercial down there next year if he chooses to. And then of course, I mean, it has to affect the product on the field, because now you've got kids they're in business now. It's, that the fact of the matter is they probably have meetings, they have Zoom meetings, they have expectations. They have, they have certain things they probably sign contracts that are like, hey, you can't do this or you lose your contract. You can't do this or you lose your contract. So now they've got more stipulations. That's not always bad. Sometimes, that's good for a young person to have structure, but it still affects things. And if it takes 5 minutes away from coaching, being coached, well, then that's an effect. So there's so many facets to it. It's just mind-boggling what's happened so quick in college football, how sudden it's been. And again, it's because the powers that be try to, put their hands over their ears and close their eyes and pretend this wasn't going to happen. So they were completely ill prepared for it. And now it's, anything goes.
Jeff, you mentioned the commercials, and I'm thinking about the Super Bowl. I'm thinking about a player in college who was not in the Super Bowl, but played at Clemson. Clemson's quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, was in a Dr. Pepper commercial. I got no problem with it. I have no problem at all. But one thing I remember about the Super Bowl commercials is that 2, 3, 4 days after the Super Bowl, let's make it a little bit quicker, the very next day at work, a lot of people don't talk about the game. They talk about those commercials, because you're not watching the game with your entire job or people, all your coworkers.
Gotcha.
You're watching it at a party, a Super Bowl party at your home with your wife, with your kids, family affair. But you're not watching it with your coworkers. Not all of them, maybe some, but not all. So you're talking about those things. But college football, a lot of people, they watch games, tailgating. They watch them in the state. Well, if you're in the stadium, you don't watch the commercials. but you're tailgating. Of course, if you're outside the stadium the entire time, you have a television and you're going to watch some commercials. You may watch them at your local bar. You may watch them at home and have a little get together at your home, your house, your apartment, whatever it may be. But these commercials, as I remember now, I don't remember watching very many plays of DJ Uiagalelei last year. I don't think I watched a complete game of Clemson. One thing I did do is I'd say it now. I remember that commercial. So now for talking about that commercial right now, this is May 18th, and this is being recorded a little bit earlier than you're listening to it. Season ended in January, and Clemson didn't play in January. Their last game was in, I do believe, December, and I do believe that. I don't believe they had a New Year's Six bowl. So we think about that little distance, about 5 months between the possibility of me seeing that commercial for the very last time, and now think about the effect that college football fans leading into Ohio State versus Michigan, leading into Ohio State versus Notre Dame, leading into Ohio State versus Wisconsin on ABC, leading into Red River, Texas, Oklahoma, leading into, you get the gist, leading into these big games, you're seeing these commercials during kickoff, during halftime, during the 3rd and 9 in the third quarter. You're in your mind. It's not just what happened on second and 15. It's also that commercial. And I know how people are. We are, what have you done for me lately? What have I seen lately? What's recent? Those commercials alone might not literally affect the actual product on the field, but it might affect the viewing product or the viewing pleasure of some, because they're saying he shouldn't be in that commercial. He shouldn't be doing that. He should be focusing on his class, on his school, on being the best quarterback or best wide out or best defensive end he can be. That it may change the mind of so many people. I know Jeff and I are talking about some hypotheticals, but that's not a hypothetical.
That's not.
That literally happened. DJ Uiagalelei has been in commercials. I believe DeJuan Jones and EJ Liddell have been in commercials in Ohio.
Oh, yeah, we see quite a few of them here.
These things are literally happening right now. And there's so many things happening that are behind the scenes, which are really, Jeff, kind of scary. How many people that we don't know who are in charge, that are behind the scenes doing things, making decisions. These things are happening right now, and it will, I 100% agree, it will affect how you view the game because of that commercial or that shoe or that armband or that scarf under the helmet. That will affect how you watch the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a great example, and it's not a college athlete, but the best example I can think of is so recent is look at Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was on every commercial, constantly all day, and it was funny. As soon as things go south, it's like, oh, the commercials aren't as funny anymore, and we don't get it now. And that's the and I always said that I'm willing, that's fine for them to take the risk, but these athletes also have to understand there's going to be repercussions. Stroud loses a game, nobody's going to like the commercial anymore. It's going to be tied to it. Like, well, maybe and I'm not even saying I just use Stroud because we're doing a Ohio State podcast. You can take any of these guys, but absolutely there's going to be repercussions, of, well, you should have been doing this instead of this. And, you're not concentrating. And then here's another hypothetical that bothers me. So you have all these athletes that go in the transfer portal, and it's insinuated. We assume that it's because there's an NIL deal waiting for him at another school. Whatever school B is, they offer it, and then this kid transfers from school A to school B. But it's kind of understood that it's from an NIL deal that came down the pipeline. Well, what happens when I don't know? We'll just make up a couple teams. We'll say Appalachian State is going for the national championship against Boise State. They're 8 games into the season, and then all of a sudden, this great NIL deal pops up for one of the kids from the opposite team, and you have a kid that quits playing with 3 games left in the season because he got offered some deal that he can't refuse. That's one of the stipulations. I mean, what happens when things like that happen? Because a kid's allowed to quit playing. Kid's allowed to quit. We saw it last year with Ohio State, and that kid's allowed to transfer. All these things can happen, and coincidentally, there could be an NIL deal waiting for him. That is, there's nothing quote unquote illegal about that, but these things are going to happen. It's silly to think that they won't, because that's what's got us into this, is everybody being like, that'll never happen. Yeah, it's absolutely going to happen. Like, it's absolutely going to happen. A player might be able to set up his family for 2 decades, because of sitting out the last 4 games of a season. That can absolutely happen.
It can happen. And Jeff, I'm thinking about a player who was at Ohio State last year, is now at Texas, and he left for money. Like, he literally left for money. Left before the season was over because Ohio State still had a game in the Rose Bowl. This young
True.
man, Quinn Ewers, I said it once, I'll say it again. He quit on his high school team. He quit on his college team, the first college team. Now, you may say, Jay, that was in the works for months. If it's in the work for months, then I'm pretty sure Pete Thamel would have been in contact. He's a phenomenal reporter. Pretty sure he probably would have had, maybe he wouldn't have, but somebody would have had their tabs on this before July, and then he's coming to Columbus in August. Now, maybe he was working on this for a very long time, but your team thinks you're going to be there in high school. Your team thinks you're going to be there in college.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing this right now, the power of the almighty dollar. And I actually had someone recently, this is 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. Somebody used to host an Ohio State podcast, talked about how the power of the almighty dollar will drastically change college football and the way we view it and the way we watch it and what happens on the field. At the time, I said, I told you before, Jeff, your boy's late to the party on a lot of trends like fashion, shoes, whatever it is. Like, I am just literally late. I would say that up front. So I was late to the party on that, but this person was right, absolutely right about how the almighty dollar is going. Well, it was and it will change college football. It is. I have no problem with. I hope Quinn Ewers is a phenomenal quarterback. I absolutely do. But we're seeing the changes now will change the product on the field, because Ohio State thought they were going to have Quinn Ewers be a quarterback at some point. I'm just talking about the things that are going on right now, and he left for some money. And I hope. I'm a secret. This is a long time ago. I used to love Texas football, man. Now, granted, it was Vince Young time. I think it was Mike Williams, or the receiver, or I know, was it Mike Hall?
There was a Roy Williams.
Roy Williams, that's who it was. It was Roy, not Mike Hall. That was down there. But Roy Williams is down there. I mean, Cedric Benson. I used to love Texas football. So secretly, not so much secret anymore. I tweeted about it last year at Red River. I hope Texas destroys Oklahoma every year. And when Quinn Ewers, assuming that he is the quarterback at Texas at some point, I hope he plays well. I don't want the young man to get hurt. I want him to be the best quarterback he can be. But we're right now seeing on the field how one quarterback is leaving a school that was at Ohio State for money. I don't think these changes are going to be going anywhere. I hope the Big Ten make some more changes drastically to improve what we see. I know the TV money is huge, and they're trying to dictate things that happen on Saturdays and Fridays and Thursdays and all the other days of the week that college football is being played. But, man, I know we got so far into this thing. I like change. I'm slow to change. I think the coaches, the players, the parents, the executives, those that are administrators, the presidents, chancellors, those that are in athletic departments. I mean, I'm going through all this on purpose. I hope they are thinking, writing things down, what might happen over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years. Because if not, you're going to be blindsided. Blindsided by NIL, blindsided by the transfer portal. 2 and done might be a thing, Jeff. I don't think the NFL wants to go to 2 and done, but that they might feel so much pressure that they cave like the NCAA did with the NIL and do it just drop of a hat. We got to do this 2 and done thing for the kids, for the youngsters. Nobody complains, Jeff. I don't really hear anybody really complain about college football. You got to be out. You have to be out of high school for 3 years before going to the NFL. It's all about the NBA. But at some point, I do believe that conversation is going to go to the NFL, going to go to college, and you might get somebody else that complains. And that is a way. That 2 and done rule in college, if that becomes a thing, that'll change the product. And I'm a person, I said it earlier, I do believe college basketball is not the same product and the players are not as good as they used to be. You want to see a quick way to see a difference on the field in college football? Let players be able to leave after being out of high school and being in college for only 2 years. You will quickly see a change in the game. Jeff, we're out of time, man. We could have done this for
I told you it'd be
full hour.
easy, brother. I love it.
Man, so much fun, man. I love the sport. I know you love the sport. I don't want to see changes that blindside people. But unfortunately, with the way that our world is changing, the sport is changing, we're going to see changes that blindside people.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we might see a different product. Unfortunately, I do think we're on the verge of seeing a different product in the next three years to what we saw last year in 2020 and 2019. And I hope it's a product that improves the product on the field. But I think the improvements might actually be a little bit negative and might change it just a tad and go away from the love. I'll still love it, but I don't like seeing things change. And we'll see how things go. Jeff, we're out of here, man. I'm rambling right now. Where can people follow you on Twitter and follow all your good work as well?
Yeah. You can follow me at jhunt006 on Twitter. I'm a part of the Off the Ball Network. My biggest thing we got going now is I just started a new show a couple weeks ago called O2BN 365, and it's essentially basically a morning show, and I recap thoughts, sports conversation, games the night before. It's a 15 to 20-minute show every day, in and out. Just I call it water cooler talk. Spark some conversation with you and people around you. I don't try to steer the conversation. I just try to start the conversation. So you can check that out on Jeff Needs Sports, or you can check it out on Off the Ball Network's podcast feed. And thanks, Jay, again for having me on, man.
No problem, guys. You can follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. It is the middle of the week. Memorial Day weekend is this weekend. Enjoy it. Get ready for it. Have some fun in the sun. The pool will probably be open. Go jump in the pool, cool off. Let's enjoy this time of year. We had cold weather, ugly weather for a really long time, longer than any of us wanted to have it. Let's enjoy the weather. Let's enjoy this time of year. It's May, but we're still talking Buckeye football because it's that big and that important. I'm out of here. Jeff is out of here. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day.